What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Scout and Combine here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Today, I'm joined by my co-host Eric Smith and our special guest today, Louis Sung, part of the Pulse of Fins Nation, which is on our 3 yards per carry newsfeed. Eric, how we doing today, my guy?
Hey, how can you not be doing good right now? Every day we're getting Dolphins news. Last night we kind of had a real football game, and next week starts the high school football season for me. So it's a great time of year. Excited.
I understand you're starting the ramp up to two-a-day practices for high school, heat conditioning as well, weather conditioning. So how's that going so far?
So that actually all starts on Monday. Monday, 10 o'clock, players report. We're doing 2 practices a day all week. Should be a fun time, nice and hot.
Oh, and Lewis, our host of Pulse of Fins Nation. How you doing today, my guy?
I'm doing all right. Getting ready to enjoy a 3-day weekend, so I'm really looking forward to some rest and relaxation. Although, Coach Eric, I think at this point the NFL players are not being pushed as hard as you're pushing your own guys. Are you trying to make are we trying to bring back the toughness of the NFL in the next generation? Is that what we're doing here?
Oh no, not even close to that. It's nowhere like when I played.
No, did you guys have 3 a day?
It was 2 a days, but it started a lot earlier, ended later, and the practices were longer. We treat these guys pretty good. They still work hard, but we treat them pretty good.
All right, well, let's get into some training camp news. I think one of the biggest things coming out of training camp so far is the progress and recovery of Jaylen Phillips. I mean, he's out here removed from surgery and he's moving like this laterally, full speed already in the beginning of August. Did anybody think this was possible?
I did.
You did.
I
Why is
did.
that?
This man is a freak of nature. Like you've seen Jaylen Phillips. You see the Greek Adonis that was Jaylen Phillips. You've seen all the pictures. We know that this guy was determined to make it back. He was remember, he was this close to never being able to play in the NFL. He was this close to stepping away from football altogether, and ultimately decided, you know what, I'm going to give it another shot. And I'm glad that he did, because it's benefiting the Miami Dolphins very well. But this guy is. You have to remember that nowadays medicine has made it to a point where the things like Achilles and ACLs, they're not nearly the career enders that they used to be. And when you have somebody who is so young, so remarkably in shape as somebody like a Jaylen Phillips, to expect him to come back as quickly as he has, it's not at all surprising to me. Now, I'm sure that Mike McDaniel is going to do this game where he likes to protect the players from themselves. I'm sure he's not going to rush Jaylen back anytime soon. I'm sure Jaylen's chomping at the bit, and I'm sure that he's petitioning, trying to show Coach, I'm ready. And Coach is going to be like, yeah, I know you think that, but let's avoid that for a little bit. I think that's the best way to go about it with Jaylen Phillips at this point. He can have his mental reps. And plus, because of another person that we're going to be talking about a little later on in the show, I don't feel a particularly pressing need to push Jaylen Phillips back earlier than we normally would have. So that's going to be my take on that. But yes, as far as the actual question, 1,000%, I expect the Jaylen Phillips to be back and ready much earlier than anybody else did.
Eric.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a surprise that he's at this point. I really do appreciate that about Mike McDaniel, because Jaylen Phillips as an athlete is going to think that he can do more than he, might be able to. And like Lewis said, medicine today, he has made leaps and bounds over the last decade in terms of these type of injuries. My concern with it is that, we're seeing him do these movements on open field, just changing direction. It's a whole different level of stress that's put on that Achilles when you have a 320-pound offensive tackle trying to move you off your spot, or you're trying to bull rush him, that type of thing. It only takes one bad play to completely start over again. So I am not surprised that Jaylen Phillips looks like he's really close to being able to play, but at the same time, I appreciate that Mike McDaniel cares about the players enough to not let them rush into a situation where we could end up with a setback where we're, without him for another season.
And the next thing that came out of training camp was obviously the Tua contract and the Tua extension as well. I think we're already way past that. Everybody is pretty much in agreement that, Tua is paid like a franchise quarterback, top 3 quarterback in average annual salary per year, a little bit less in guarantees, but a better contract as well. We're going to talk a little bit about that on a different show. Lewis, I know you guys spoke about it on Pulse of Fins Nation. He's proved that he can stay healthy for 17 games. He's proved that he can be a quality NFL starter. He's proved that, he can play in multiple systems. I mean, he did it with Coach Flores with his rotating offensive coordinators, and now with Mike McDaniel. He's proven that now he can be paid like a franchise quarterback. He needs to prove that he can win the AFC East and he can win some playoff games as well. Do you think this is the year that Tua Tagovailoa answers that criticism?
I mean, quite frankly, I would like to reshape the question. It's not a question of whether or not that Tua needs to answer the questions. As far as I'm concerned, he's already answered the questions just in his everyday play. It's a matter of just going out there and hopefully the everything falls the way it's supposed to. When you look at what happened last season with the Miami Dolphins, you have to keep in mind that there is some level of context that has to go into everything. It's never in a vacuum. This is why people are so critical of Tua Tagovailoa as it is. It's that it's not a question of what's going on around the player. I love the way that it was phrased. I believe it was Louis Riddick on ESPN who brought it up that way, because they're talking about who would you rather build a foundation of a football team from the ground up. You start with your quarterback and then you build a team around that person. They play like this fantasy football type thing. That's not how it works in the NFL. You have we as much as we love Tua Tagovailoa, let's be real about this. As much as we love Tua, if we were asked in a vacuum, we are going to start up a brand new expansion team and every single player in the league is now a free agent, we're all going to start with Patrick Mahomes. Every single one of us is going to start with Patrick Mahomes. And I'm sure that the people will come after that. They would say, oh, I want Josh Allen. Oh, I want Lamar Jackson. Oh, I want this guy. I want this guy. I want this guy. Irrelevant. What you have with Tua is essentially what his ceiling has been all along. This is the exact same discussion that we had the day that he was drafted. If you look at Tua, what you are seeing is a young Drew Brees. And I say that the way I said that, listen to what I said, a young Drew Brees, because I keep saying it over and over again. And it's the same story with me. It took 6 years for Drew Brees to become Drew Brees, the one that everybody reveres and remembers in their memory, this unbelievable type of quarterback who could pick apart a defense and not even think twice about it. And that same Drew Brees did win a Super Bowl in his career. However, understand, he has limitations physically. He doesn't have the strongest arm. He's not the fastest guy out there. But if you put the pieces around him, give him an offense he can function in, which Mike McDaniel has done, you can and potentially will win a Super Bowl with somebody like a Tua. You just have to understand that he's not going to be the guy who's going to go out there, play backyard football, and throw off his back foot 60 yards into the end zone, falling backwards. That's not how it works. That's not who Tua is. What you have, if you're going to understand that, is Drew Brees. You have to acknowledge that just like Drew Brees, there were physical limitations you have to plan around. So will Tua do all these things? Will he end up winning a playoff game? Will he end up doing? He will if the pieces around him may remain. Because remember, last season, Tua had almost no offensive line left. And by the way, the offense essentially was predicated on the ball has to leave in less than 2 seconds or Tua's going to hit the dirt. That's not a sustainable plan. So, yes, offensive line needs to still be in one piece for the most part. You can miss one player, maybe two if you're lucky, but you can't be missing most of your best players on the line. It's not going to work that way. So, Tua will win a playoff game if Tua's pieces stay in one piece.
Eric.
Yeah, so the comparison for me also from the beginning has always been Drew Brees. If you look at Tua and you are expecting Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, that type of quarterback, those type of plays, you're never going to be satisfied with Tua. As far as, the playoff success, again, that's not just a Tua thing. I went into last year, and my expectation for last year was playoffs and a playoff win. That obviously we didn't get the win part of it. So to me, last year was a disappointment. You can see why, right? There's plenty of reasons why they didn't do that, but it's still a disappointment. So again, my expectation coming into this year is going to be, yes, my expectation is that they don't just make the playoffs, but they win a game and hopefully make even a little more noise than that, because I think that the team that they have this year is better than the team that they had at the beginning of last year. So the expectations should be a little higher. Do I think this is going to be the year that Tua wins a playoff game? I sure hope so. But it doesn't change my opinion of him one way or the other, right? They didn't win that playoff game last year when I was expecting it, and I still had no problem giving him that big contract because he's still the same quarterback that I expected. But again, if you're looking for a different type of quarterback, you're never going to be satisfied with him. But if you look at him for what he is and the elite things that he does that can avoid some of those hero type plays, then you see a top tier quarterback on the field with him.
And that's the thing you have to keep in mind, right? Is that understand, once again, you what kind of a type of quarterback you have in Tua, and that's perfectly fine. So, like you said, Coach, I'm not looking at Tua and saying the man is a failure if he doesn't win a playoff game this year, because everything is not in a vacuum. It's not all on Tua. It's not all about Tua. And by the way, as a little reminder for everybody, even though the Chiefs ended up winning that game against Miami in the freezing cold, literally record low temperatures of that game, Patrick Mahomes wasn't good in that game either. So the guy who's used to the cold or whatever and always has home field advantage, he looked pretty trash too. And you know why? Because what was it, below 30?
It felt something? Like negative 34.
Feels like temperature negative 34 degrees. That's inhuman. There are literally reports of people who had their fingers fall off from frostbite. That's how cold it was out there. Give Tua a little slack, huh?
Give him a little bit of a slack, but I don't think the fans will appreciate giving him that slack, especially with his contract the way it is.
Welcome to the new NFL, man. Like Jared Goff just got paid, and I know that people are suddenly having revisionist history about Jared Goff, but literally 2 seasons ago, we were laughing out loud, very, very loudly at Jared Goff, saying he's not good, and we roasted Jared Goff when he was in Detroit. We absolutely destroyed this man on their home field, and we were laughing at him. So he got paid, but apparently now everybody thinks, oh yeah, Jared Goff's totally better than Tua. In what world? I part of me feels like, I'm being serious about this, Hussam. A few years ago, I don't know if you remember this, Coach. Maybe you don't know about it either. Good friend of mine, Danny Martinez. He's a brain guy, right? So he wrote an article about how the brain bias of like people have like they have this aversion to left-handed quarterbacks just on a natural level. If you look it up, I'm sure you'll find it, but it's a fascinating read.
I am a lefty. I can understand that.
But it's like people are looking at the left-handed quarterback. That's the whole reason the Righty Tua Twitter account exists, because you see all the comments underneath like, oh my God, why does it look so much better now? Because your brain doesn't like left-handed quarterback. It sees it. It doesn't like it. It says this is wrong because literally every other quarterback in the NFL throws with their right hand and they're used to seeing it. So seeing Tua throw lefty just throws everybody off. I really believe at this point there's maybe not a lot, but there's something to that. Like they can't help themselves. Their brain is yelling at them saying, abort, this is wrong.
Lefty bias. It could be lefty bias. It could be a whole lot of
I'll pull up
bias.
the article. I will let you guys take a look at it. It is fascinating reading.
Send us the article and do tweet it out for all of our listeners and followers to take a look at. Next topic is the cheat motion, or as we like to call it, the sharp motion. So basically, there was a tweet and an article that came out by Pro Football Talk, specifically Mike Florio, saying that the league is going to be basically banning the cheat motion or the motion that the Dolphins basically took advantage of in the rule book. Basically, the league just wants to ban players moving forward, like here, forward before the snap, right? Forward. We're talking about here, not here, here. Okay? And players doing that, quick motion, they have like a habit of going upward towards the end of the motion. Like, remember when everyone thought that Trent Williams, I think 2 seasons ago, Trent Williams was literally cheating and moving all the time from his snap, the half snap. And Eric, you can talk
Yep.
a little bit about it. That he was cheating. He was using that motion, and like he's moving before the snap. Like, is he actually moving before the snap?
I mean, for the Trent Williams thing, that was just a timing thing that it was so close, and because of his status, he's going to get a little flexibility here. This whole cheat motion thing, I don't understand what the uproar or even why they changed a rule about it. I am 40 years old. All 40 years of my life, it has been illegal to be in forward motion at the snap of the football. So the rules have gotten lenient with it, and I get why they could be cracking down on it some, because they do, you'll see them leaning a little early, or when you see the Trent Williams going in motion, he's kind of taking a path that is into the line of scrimmage a little more than it probably should. So I get that they've been moving forward. I get that there is a concern with it, but I don't understand why a rule had to be changed with this. It's always been illegal to go in forward motion at the snap.
Lewis.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the guys on the OnlyFins kind of explained it to me, because I had asked if this was going to have much of an effect on the Dolphins, which, by the way, if you haven't already gone to OnlyFins, only $3 a month, you can use discord.gg/OnlyFins. It is the best place to get Dolphins talk. Forget about Twitter or X, however you decide you want to call it. OnlyFins is the best place to go, because you can even get some interesting information that you can't get anywhere else. That includes here, by the way. There are things that I know that I'm not allowed to say because it was in OnlyFins. So you guys should join up as soon as you get the chance. With that being said, the way that it was explained to me is that ultimately this isn't going to have much of an effect on Miami's offense as it is, which I'm okay with. I'm sure basically the way that the reason we even learned about this at all was because it was posted out by Mike Florio, who in truth, the way that it was explained to me, and honestly, I believe it at this point, Mike Florio is just grouchy that Tua got paid, and he's looking for any and every excuse to find something to gripe about. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's all it is.
So here's my thing, and it's basically a gimmick, right? It's basically like a gimmick for the Dolphins offense. That's what everybody else sees it as, right? Like kind of like the Eagles doing the tush push, right? Everyone was talking about, oh, let the tush push get banned. Oh, people won't be able to keep up with it, or whatever it is, right? I think that it's more so just the motion can be frustrating for opposing teams up especially against Miami. And I feel like that the officials will try to pull something silly, and towards the beginning of the season, especially during September, it's like a big play just happens, and it's like, oh, wait, hold on. There's a flag on the field. There's a flag on the field. Yellow flag. We're like, what? Is it a holding? Is it an offside? Did somebody do something? And it's like illegal shift, forward motion, number 10, Tyreek Hill, 10-yard penalty, repeat, third down. And it's like a big play just happened, right? This didn't get called last year. It's the same exact thing. He didn't even move forward. All he did was move laterally. He didn't even go after this. He didn't even move before the snap forward, and you're calling an illegal shift or not an illegal shift. What would it be? Just a fall, basically a
Illegal
false
motion.
or illegal motion or false start. Like, you can't be calling that over, or even a delay of game. What Jason Stamps is doing. Look at what they do for a delay of game. Look at the clock. Look at the ball. Then look back at the clock. Like, are they going to be reviewing every single play? Are they going to be reviewing every single play? And the Dolphins did this motion, or did some type of motion, 81% of the time. So they can't just ban a rule because one team is doing it. Like, I know a lot of us talking about the tush push, but if one team is doing it well and the other teams are trying to do it and they can't replicate it, maybe the other team is just better at you than that. Just like how the Dolphins have the best wide receiver, potentially the best wide receiver trio in the NFL. Just like how the Browns had the best defense in the NFL. The Browns played defense better than anybody last year. You can't really ban or make it easier for your opponent. You can't put a handicap to this. That's all I'm trying to say. You can't put a handicap.
I am sure that this is all much ado about nothing at this point. I tend to believe the 3 yards per carry guys when they say things. I feel like they're very smart. They know what they're talking about, and if they say this is nothing to worry about, I'm gonna take them at their word. Now, to be fair, Scotty in the chat is talking about this. We had multiple illegal shift penalties last year, and we will likely have many of them again, just because somebody's gonna have an itchy trigger finger. But I don't see that this is going to be a long-term issue for Miami. We're going to have our moments. We're going to have our oops moments, but that's okay because Tua will just find somebody 25 yards down the field and we'll get all those yards back anyway. So,
yeah, we will. All right. The next thing is going to be the snap situation.
I defer to Coach Eric on all things offensive line.
I've been waiting to talk about this one.
Let me tell you a little something about.
Right, like I love football. I watch a lot of football. I wouldn't call myself an expert of all things football, but snapping the ball, I know a lot. Like, I played center a lot coming up through. I coach the offensive line. I can tell you that bad snaps are not good, right? But generally speaking, right, we don't chastise quarterbacks for inaccurate passes, right? And it's kind of the same thing that quarterbacks most of the time are fairly accurate. They're going to have some off target, and you have the same thing with centers. And sometimes those inaccurate ones, they just aren't. They may not be seen. Right? We get snaps that are up here and the quarterback gets it, or it's over here and the quarterback gets it. And nobody says that's a bad snap, but it goes 6 inches more and the quarterback's not able to get it. And then suddenly it's a horrible snap and it's a big issue, right? Bad snaps ruin plays in games. They limit plays in practice. When we look at how short these teams get for team portions of practice, every bad snap that you have cuts away a snap that you have in practice, and that film review is valuable and you're taking away from it. So yes, it's still a bad thing, but again, they happen. Go back to the Chiefs and the Eagles Super Bowl. Both Creed Humphrey and Jason Kelsey, two of the best centers in the game, playing in the biggest game of the season, they had bad snaps in that game. Okay, so now that we know that snaps are bad but they happen, why do they happen? Right? So if you've never snapped a football, right, take a ball of any kind, get down into a 3-point stance, and throw it between your legs at the wall at a spot on the wall, right? And do that until you can hit that spot without looking consistently. And
I won't be able to do it.
Most people, if you do that enough, you could do that, right? But now do that, and as you're doing it, step at the same time, right? Step to the side, throw the ball between your legs, and still hit that same point. Now that gets a lot harder, right? And then you add on the next layer of, once you can step and do it, now go find the biggest guy on the street that you can find, put him in front of you, and then still step to the side, still hit that target every single time, right? And then we get to the fact that every center on the roster not named Liam Eichenberg is new to the roster. And every center other than Liam Eichenberg and Aaron Brewer have not snapped in an NFL game. So these guys are all trying to absorb a complex playbook in addition to a new environment, right? There was bound to be changes at the beginning of training camp, just with all of the changes at that position, right? Take it another step further. Aaron Brewer, he didn't participate in at least part of the OTAs. I know there was one OTA session or one OTA that they had where Brewer was injured. Eichenberg ended up playing center for that OTA. So you didn't have Tua and Brewer taking snaps then. You have the very limited snaps that Tua took to start training camp. So you just have limited reps that they had even done that. It wasn't something that they had the chance to resolve before training camp with, close to live reps in OTAs. So this is still pretty fresh, right? And then we get into the individual players, right? Shotgun snaps. The center's aiming point is going to be a little different from one center to the next. There's a good piece on the New Heights podcast with Jason Kelsey where he talks about how quarterbacks hate his shotgun snaps because they're so low, right? And that's just an example that, he's a center. He's been around forever. He's going to tell the quarterback, I'm not changed. You got to figure out how to catch the ball, right? And then you throw in timing, the motions, all of that stuff, and everything's got to happen right at the right time. So it's just, it's getting more and more complicated as we go along. Next thing, right? It's easier to catch a shotgun snap, right? You see a lot of the touch passes. When they're running reverses, you'll see them kind of toss the ball up because it's easier to catch a ball in the air than it is to take an under center snap. And the reason for that is, especially the left and right-handed thing. Like I said, I'm a lefty, and I came up with right-handed quarterbacks, right? And the other centers, they were always right-handed centers. So there was always an adjustment there from when I was at center and somebody else subbed in or vice versa. Now, we didn't have fumbled snaps like that because, again, like Lewis said or, referred to, things were a lot different back then. And it was not acceptable at all for a fumbled snap even in practice. But, you're looking at, I made this point on Twitter before too, that Connor Williams, he's 6'5". Aaron Brewer is 6'1". I am 5'11". Our starting center when I was a senior, he was 6'3". So I was the second center. I started at tackle, but if something happened to him, I moved into center. When I went to center, my stance was a lot lower, and every time those quarterbacks who were 6'2", 6'3", they had to squat down to get under my 5'11", but I could hear them groaning back there because it was just lower than what they were used to, right? And the same deal with Aaron Brewer. He's going from right-handed quarterbacks, and that, right? Put your hands together, put them under a table, right? And look at the way your hands are, and then flip them as if you were a left-handed quarterback. And you can see how your hands change and the way that ball coming up would be different, right? So that's all an adjustment period. And I guess that, I don't know how long I've been talking now, probably 7 or 8 minutes on snapping the damn football. But the main point I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of reasons this is happening. It's all pretty normal. And these guys are professionals. It's going to get fixed.
So Tua is going to have to change the way he takes the snaps. So my next question is, Eric, are the bad snaps primarily the handling of the ball by Tua, or it's 50-50?
It's 50-50. I mean, these guys are both professionals, right? Brewer probably has to adjust slightly the way that he brings the ball up. Like most of these snap issues between Brewer and Tua, from my understanding, are the under center stuff. I think the shotgun ones are more some of the other guys and not necessarily Brewer. But so Brewer is going to have to adjust the way that he is bringing that ball up slightly, right? He's not going to switch hands or anything drastic like that, but it's small changes. Same thing with Tua. I talked about Tua's, when he goes under center, he is going to be squatting down further to get under Aaron Brewer than he would getting under Connor Williams, getting under Liam Eichenberg. So that's going to change his footwork slightly, right? We're not reinventing the wheel here, but things are going to be noticeably different and take a little bit of time to adjust. And it's not, you can't pinpoint it on one specific player, one specific thing. It is something that is going to take reps, and I have full confidence in a couple of good professionals being able to figure this out.
Lewis, do you have any questions?
I guess I'm just hoping that coach is right and that this is going to sort itself out, because I do remember once upon a time we had a center by the name of Matt Skura, who was known as one of the best blocking centers in the NFL, but his snapping, the yips as we call them, never went away. So I'm hoping that with Aaron Brewer that, yes, everything sorts itself out and that everything works out at the end of the day, because I don't want to take a look at Aaron Brewer, who we paid a lot more money to, and say, oh, we have another Matt Skura on our hands, because Matt Skura, again, according to Pro Football Focus, which again, take for a grain of salt, but once upon a time, he was one of the best blocking centers in football. He just couldn't snap worth a lick. And that was not always the case with him. So I don't know what happened. So,
yeah. We also have here a compilation of stuff from not only the Dolphins, but the Packers, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Jets, the Bears, and the Buffalo Bills. The Dolphins aren't the only ones experiencing this throughout training camp. I mean, these things happen, folks. That's why training camp exists. You make the mistakes, you learn from them. Josh Allen is having issues with his center. Jordan Love is having issues with his center. Aaron Rodgers is having issues with his center. Arguably, and we said on this podcast, these guys are better than Tua. All right? Like, if you were to start a franchise with one of those three quarterbacks, 2 out of the 3, you would potentially take over Tua, especially Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers.
no, I wouldn't. Aaron Rodgers, no. This Aaron Rodgers?
Not
no.
this Aaron Rodgers.
No. We can't go back in time. I'm not taking no. Aaron Rodgers today, no, I'll take Tua. Thank you.
All right. There it is. There it is from Lewis. All right. The next thing we got. Start of the show here so far during training camp. Quinton Bell and Lewis, you mentioned that he reminds you a little bit of Brennan Scarlett. Remember his name, folks? What have you seen from training camp from Quinton Bell and from the 2 weeks in training camp? Could he be one of those quality guys that takes 20 to 30 snaps in the beginning of the season?
Well, all the reports that everybody's giving, Alf and them and the regular beat writers, they're all saying the same thing, that Quinton Bell just explodes off the page whenever you see him. Mind you, this guy's 28, so he's not exactly a young guy by any stretch of the imagination. He's been in and out of teams his whole career. He started in 2019 with the Raiders, then he got moved to the Bucks, he got moved to the Falcons, he got moved to the Eagles. Now he's here at Miami. So he's been bouncing around the league for a little while. So I guess something finally clicked with him. I'm perfectly okay with that. The reason I say it compared to Brennan Scarlett, and Eric and I actually had a little brief exchange on Twitter about that. My mindset with the Brennan Scarlett comparison is that this is the underdog guy. This is a guy that came up out of nowhere.
Here's the interaction, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. I didn't know anything about Brennan Scarlett when he showed up in Miami. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a guy. This would be interesting. And then when I actually saw him play, I was like, oh, okay, I see you. And I appreciated that about him. It's like these guys who have like a fire in their belly. And I've always liked those kinds of players, the go out there and give it everything you've got kind of players. That's why I was such a big fan of Shaquem Griffin when he showed up in Miami a few years ago. I was really hoping he'd make the team, because every single snap that he played, he was going 120% each and every snap. And he was making a few plays here and there. It wasn't anything wow worthy all the time, but when he made a play, you saw him make the play. Ultimately, it didn't work out for him. I understand why. Life's not fair. I'm really sorry for him. But like guys like him who just come up out of nowhere and they just play and they do well just on raw effort, like this kid has, and he has great talent. I can't even call him a kid because again, he's 28 years old. He's getting close to the old age as far as the NFL is concerned. But with Shaq Barrett gone, and we don't want to rush back Jaylen Phillips, and Chop, for what it's worth, as much as Chop Robinson has been showing that he has incredible get off the snap energy, we've also been hearing that he doesn't do all the all-around stuff that great. So right now, Chop is probably best used as a third down pass rusher. So if Quinton Bell can take over as the starting edge guy, then that puts a lot of pressure off of Miami, because we were counting on Shaquille Barrett to hold down that fort. And now that he's gone, which by the way, I totally understand if he wants to spend more time with his family, but dude, make that decision before you sign a contract. Just saying. So Quinton Bell is making it so that Barrett's absence is not felt that much. So I'm very grateful that he's doing what he's doing.
So we'll go ahead and play a clip from camp about Quinton Bell right here.
You spent all of last season, well, most of last season on the practice squad. Now you're getting legit opportunity at outside linebacker. What's that feeling like?
It's feeling amazing. I'm all about getting better and seizing my opportunities. And every day I'm coming out here, continue to improve on everything I can, continue to gain trust with the coaching staff. That's my main goal, just gaining trust with this coaching staff, showing them that I come out every day, I work hard, I get better, and that you can trust me on Sunday. That's what I want to do. I want to gain trust.
I need to know how you go from a college receiver to an NFL pass rusher.
It's a crazy story. I want to make a movie one day, definitely. In my junior year, I played receiver my first 3 years. We got a new coaching staff that came in at Prairie View, and the DC and the defensive line coach saw something in me, and they saw something in me, and they came and met with me and said, "Hey, we want you to play D-line." And at first, it was a crazy request. I didn't know how I felt about it, but they started talking about opportunities, the NFL, and you know what? I was like, I have nothing to lose. I don't want to look back on this and say, I wish I would have tried that. And I would probably say to this day, it's probably the best decision I've ever made.
Were you a good receiver?
I was fast, but
the hands were good.
The hands were okay. The speed was there. The route running was subpar. I would say that I wasn't probably going to get an NFL opportunity I received, and I will admit that.
So obviously they saw something and it was a blessing in disguise. What was the transition for you like in the NFL, learning the intricacies of being an edge player?
The main thing that I learned right away instantly was that my athletic ability can only get me so far. I need to learn on the techniques. I need to get better technically. I feel like in college, I made a lot of plays just off my pure athleticism. And when I got to the league, I realized these players are better. I'm fast, but they're fast too. And so that was the main thing in transition for sure.
So how do you go from being a twitchy athlete now to being a guy who makes plays?
Hard work. I have a great coach in Coach Crow. I have a lot of great coaches in my career. I'm a very coachable guy. I pride myself in being coachable. I feel like being coachable is ultimately what got me to this point, being able to get better and listen and take the drills to the field. That's my main thing, and that's pretty much my mindset every day is these coaches know a lot more than me, and they're here to make me look good, and if I play good, they look good. So I trust all my coaches, and I've always have, and I really pride myself on being coachable.
I mean, wow, very honest, very humble, knows, what he lacks, what he can improve on. And the fact that he was a former college wide receiver leads me to believe we have another linebacker / edge rusher that can drop back into coverage. You know who was also that guy last season for us? Andrew Van Ginkel. You get Quinton Bell, around 28, roughly the same age as Andrew Van Ginkel, maybe a year or so older. Going to be paid less, obviously, than Andrew Van Ginkel. If he can get a similar type of production that Van Ginkel had, not necessarily last year, but maybe the year before or when he started, I would say that's a pretty good win for the Dolphins. And if he's making plays like this throughout camp, he can get his technique down. He could be a rotational edge guy when Bradley Chubb and Jaylen Phillips come back in. Eric, we talked about it. Anthony Weaver likes to rotate his defenders and edge rushers and even interior defensive linemen a lot. With his athletic ability, you can really put together a speed package or a speed rush package on like a second or third and long, which you just go straight beeline over to the quarterback. Is there potential for Quinton Bell to be a 20 to 30 snap guy this season if he continues his progress throughout training camp and preseason?
Yeah, so I'm going to throw another comparison in there, right? We had the Brandon Scarlett. We've got the Andrew Van Ginkel, right? We're talking about a player who wasn't really noticed in college. He was a very toolsy athlete coming out of college. When he talks about not being a great route runner, I get the idea that, maybe he didn't take it quite as seriously at the beginning. And then he starts to figure out that, hey, I've really got a chance at this, but I've really got to work in the weight room, got to develop those finer skills. Reminds me of somebody who used to go by Derek Wake that went to the CFL, learned how to play football, and then came down to Miami under the name Cam Wake. Now, I'm obviously not saying that Quinton Bell is going to be a, Hall of Fame caliber player like Cam Wake may end up being in the end, right? But that story sounds a lot like that. And when you look at what Cam Wake did early in his Miami days, it was exactly what you're talking about there, Hussam, where he came in and he wasn't just throwing in as, you're a day one, you're the star on the team. It was a 20 to 30 snap type guy that was able to build on that. And when you look at the way that Quinton Bell has been talked about from the time that he arrived with the Dolphins to where he is now, you kind of get the idea that growth has been happening, right? And now hopefully we can see that growth transition to the field and continue to develop even from there.
That's a great story, and hopefully we can see something like that for the Dolphins and for Quinton Bell. Lewis?
I only have one thing to add. Did you know that Ryan Tannehill was a college wide receiver?
No, never heard that one.
I had to.
Sealer-esque, as Jason Stamp likes to call it. If everyone is healthy, who's your 4 rushers and where? Eric, this is a question for you.
Well, okay, so everyone's healthy, right? It's obviously Chubb. It's obviously Jaylen Phillips, right? I'm going to put Sealer in the middle to push that pocket. And then my third guy, it's probably going to be Chop Robinson, right? Because when you look at the tools that Chop Robinson has from day one, and we're talking about everybody being healthy. So if you've got Chop Robinson on the field with Phillips, Chubb, and Sealer, and you can move him around and find those mismatches, that is a really good, probably top in the NFL pass rush that you can put together if everybody's healthy.
I mean, for me, it would be I'm more traditional in that in the sense of who I would pick, because he also added the question of where. Well, I guess my question would be, okay, so where does Chop go? Is he going to go down the middle? Is that what we're aiming for, like a 3-tech type thing? But as far as if it's going to be my guys, I'm picking Phillips. Obviously, Chubb is number 2, and I'm picking Sealer, and I'm going with Calais Campbell. That's because he can be the second defensive tackle, de facto pass rusher up the middle kind of guy. He's been doing it all his career. So as far as I'm concerned, if that's our best run of 4, if we're gonna go just strictly traditional front 4 kind of lineup. Now, if you're gonna have Chop running around like a wide 9 type thing all the way out here, that's a different discussion.
So to answer the question on where, because I didn't address that part of it, you could put Chop over the nose, right? We've seen that. But if you want to put Chop on the edge and have more of a traditional 4-man rush, we've seen Jaylen Phillips and Bradley Chubb be able to slide down and rush from a 3 technique and try to get them one-on-one with the guard, right? You put Chop wide, take him wide, take that tackle out of the picture. And now we've talked about that before on this podcast, that you're creating space to work with against that guard for a Jaylen Phillips or a Bradley Chubb just to abuse a less athletic guard. Now, that's not what I'm going with in a run situation, right? But we're talking about top 4 pass rushers and how you'd use them.
Yeah. My guys would be where and when. I would actually have a condensed line where I would have Bradley Chubb as my edge. I would have Phillips as my 3 technique, Calais along the interior to bully those guards as well. And then I would have Chop Robinson not Chop Robinson, I'm sorry, Zach Sealer at the right end, because all of those 4 guys, those 3 out of the 4 guys, you can play them anywhere except for potentially Bradley Chubb. I don't think he'd be able to work his way up the middle. He doesn't have that versatility or that hand usage that I've seen from the other 3 guys. But I may be wrong. I haven't really seen Bradley Chubb do a lot of work up the nose or up the middle. He has on stunts and twists, I will say. But with that condensed line, you can literally run a bunch of stunts and twists with those guys and be like, okay, confuse the offensive lineman. Okay, how am I setting this up, right? The biggest question is, Eric, and I've learned a lot of this from you, is how will the offensive line react seeing that? You're like, okay, am I sliding protection to the left? Am I sliding protection to the right? Who's coming inside? When you snap the ball, then you're like, oh, crap. You're like, I did this wrong. Or, okay, we got this. We have these protections built in place. The tight end is going to chip in. I'm able to pull off and do a steal or a crackback as well and assist with that. But how do you plan for that? Number one, especially if those guys are not playing their primary positions besides Bradley Chubb. Jaylen Phillips has seen a lot of improvement as a 3 technique. And if you have Chop Robinson stunting inside with his speed and his get off, the guard can be like, oh, I'm frozen, and he gets out to the quarterback. That's the way how I see it. But honestly, that's like a sub package type of play for me. And that's a specialized thing. All right, the next topic. Lewis, we talked a little bit about it before the show, the battle for the third wide receiver. I mean, we all assume that it's going to be Odell Beckham Jr., but
It is
he
going to
hasn't
be
really
Odell Beckham
practiced
Jr.
that much. We know he's on a load management type of thing, but if Odell Beckham Jr., right, if Odell Beckham Jr. was not a Miami Dolphin, let's play this hypothetical game.
Oh, okay.
You like hypothetical games, right? You like hypothetical.
I can do hypothetical. Go ahead.
Okay. If Odell Beckham Jr. was not a Miami Dolphin, you have Braxton Berrios, Eric Azukanma, who, again, got injured yet again, River Craycraft, Malik Washington, along with who's the guy? Braylon Sanders. That is your battle for the third wide receiver position if Odell Beckham Jr. was not on the roster. Who would be that third guy and why?
Willie Snead.
Totally forgot about Willie Snead.
If Tua will throw it to him.
I'll throw it to him.
Listen, I'm not going to disrespect River Craycraft by any stretch of the imagination, but as far as who's the third wide receiver, it would likely just be Braxton Berrios again. I firmly believe that the Miami Dolphins, in many ways, they are creatures of habit, for better or worse. The same way that I predicted that with all this talk about the new kickoff rules and, we're going to have Tyreek out there, and we're going to have Achane out there, and we're going to have this guy out there, and we're going to have this guy. It's still Berrios. It's going to be Berrios. Like, we know that it's going to be Berrios. Like, I'm sure there were people hoping, praying, projecting, desperately trying to manifest it into existence that it would be somebody other than Braxton Berrios. It is not. It is going to be Berrios doing the returns. And just in that same vein, since the wide receiver room itself has not changed that much, aside from adding Odell Beckham, but since hypothetically speaking, we are not adding him, that means that at least for the beginning of the season, if we're saying who's number wide receiver 3, it would probably be Braxton Berrios, and then Craycraft is number 4.
We have Scotty here saying as soon as Malik feels comfortable. There's a reason why the Dolphins signed Willie Snead. They feel like Malik Washington is not progressing as much as he should have. Eric, you shook your head. What's going on?
I think that's strictly due to the Ezukanma injury. Ezukanma's injured again. You have to have somebody to fill training camp snaps. You don't necessarily at this point want to just bring somebody in. Anybody that you bring in is not really competing for a roster spot, right? So you look at Willie Snead, who played, I think, 2 years in San Francisco. So he knows this offense. We talked about losing snaps or losing plays when you can't snap the ball. Well, if you got a receiver out there running the wrong routes, you're going to lose plays there too. So in my opinion, Willie Snead was just a guy that was familiar with the system coming in after the Ezukanma and the Odell Beckham injuries, and he's just filling snaps in training camp and hoping to catch on somewhere.
All right. And speaking of Ezukanma, does this feel like a Hunter Long type of situation to any of you guys?
I mean, if the Dolphins can find a trade partner, I would be shocked at this point. I don't feel like anybody's going to be chomping at the bit to get their hands on Eric Ezukanma, especially since everybody knows that there's something wrong with him for whatever, because he was out all last year with a non-football injury, and now once again he's out for an undisclosed reason that we don't know yet. So I sincerely doubt there's any trade coming down the pipe with Ezukanma involved. As far as the Hunter Long thing, remember that trade was much more about the 3rd round pick and salary dump than it was about Hunter Long. He was just the bonus. He was the bonus onion ring in the bag of fries. But
remember, the Dolphins do have 2 extra third compensatory picks. Obviously, they can't trade them yet, but that means they have, I believe, 3 third rounders next year.
Yeah. So we got we got room to maneuver, but again, it wouldn't be about Ezunkama. Ezunkama would be that bonus onion ring. It's about the 3rd round pick that the other team would be getting. Now, even if we have trade rumors, because for some reason everything's been swirling around that the Dolphins are interested in grabbing somebody. First of all, the only thing, and I do mean the only thing that Miami better be targeting as far as a trade is concerned is offensive line help. Like literally nothing else. Nothing else. If they trade for anything else at this juncture, I will be upset because they don't need anything else. They have everything else in spades, I might add. So, because even with the defensive tackles, like they had this grab bag of defensive tackles that they were hoping that somebody would be able to step in and help rotate out with Christian Wilkins. Tier Tart is doing a much better job than I thought he was going to. So,
what did I tell you, Eric, about Tier Tart?
I don't think the guy is a every down kind of snap guy, but he can play. So if he makes the team, kudos to him. But like I said, Miami has everything else. Literally the only thing they don't have at this point is solid, just guaranteed plug and play offensive linemen. And even if they were to look around for one, I know that Chris Kaufman of the 3 yards per carry crew kind of explored a potential option, one of the Steelers guys, I believe. But even that's like the only thing that I'm looking around at and saying, oh yeah, that's definitely somebody that I want to get my hands on. So, because I would have wanted to get Greg Van Roten, and somebody else already swiped him for a cheap deal, I might add. And Scotty wants to trade Braxton Berrios. Once again, he is the returner. He is not going anywhere. Do you understand? Nowhere. He's going nowhere.
Eric, 3rd wide receiver if Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't ramp up his practices.
Okay, so let's go back to a conversation that we've had here on the Scouting Combine about the 3rd wide receiver in this offense that is also known as the F position. When the 3rd wide receiver is on the field, he is the F position, right? So why does it have to be a wide receiver, right? Why do we have to limit it to the Berrios, the Washington, right? Why can't we talk about Achane getting additional snaps as that 3rd wide receiver? Why can't we talk about Durham Smythe and Jonnu Smith being in there together, and Jonnu lining up in the slot as a flexed out tight end wide receiver 3, right? We've seen good stuff from both Tanner Connor and Jody Fortson. So if one of those guys make the roster, why can't we look at those guys? So I don't think that that 3rd wide receiver position, the F position in this offense, necessarily has to be a wide receiver on the depth chart.
Interesting. And part of the reason I feel like Achane can be a viable, solid 3rd option is that you also have another guy waiting in the wings. You have Jaylen Wright, who you just drafted, and he's been the first guy in the building from what I'm hearing, and he's always been one of the last guys out. As a rookie, that's eye-popping. Like you from a rookie doing that, that's eye-popping. Like that's a leader right there. That's somebody who's pretty much committed. We have heard about the tight ends lining up a little bit more in line, and I'm not so sure if that's due to a 12 personal package or the fast 21 that you put in for Smythe and Ingold as well. But I feel like that, Jaylen Wright, we talked about his vision here on the Scouting Combine podcast. It's pretty good. His speed is up there too with the likes of Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. Obviously not as fast as those guys, but maybe just a hair, a hair or so. I do think that, with the Odell Beckham Jr. signing, it gives them a lot of flexibility in who can go where, who can go what as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize that 3rd wide receiver, especially if Berrios and Craycraft, as we saw last season, Craycraft was Mr. Reliable for the Dolphins. But as Lewis says, Craycraft, he's not worth it.
Are we done being hypothetical now?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Odell Beckham Jr.
All right, and this leads into my trade incoming. Like, obviously, you may want to trade one of your guys for like an asset, maybe a 5th rounder or a 6th rounder. And Lewis, as you said, they should really target an OL, primarily someone along the interior. The 3 yards per carry guys have, flirted with the idea of Daniels from Pittsburgh. Why not flirt with the idea of Trent Williams from the 49ers?
To do
Eric?
what?
Yeah, that would be my question. To do what?
To do what? Right?
You've already got Teron Armstead.
Right, exactly.
they're
Like, are you
comfortable-
benching Armstead? Are you trading Armstead? One for one?
Hey, you could. Maybe Armstead is looking to
the
retire.
49ers would
Maybe
not
he's
take
looking to pull. Maybe he's looking to pull a Shaq Barrett.
No,
I mean,
not the way he's
Trent-
been talking.
Trent Williams does like lining up in the backfield and getting in that motion to run through. So maybe we can just give him an eligible number and just use him as a move lead blocker.
Yeah,
Could you
we'll
imagine
pay him
6
$72
offensive
million
linemen
for
on
that.
the field right now? 6. Look, the thing is, Lewis, if you have watched our film reviews, it makes a ton of sense. It makes a ton of sense for having Williams as a lead blocker, especially on screens, on tosses, on inside and outside zone runs. Come on.
I'm not trading a 1st-round pick and then some for a lead blocker. Please stop.
Hey, but your offensive line is set, a plug-and-play guy right there.
Where? He's a left tackle.
You can move Teron to a left guard position too. I'm sure he can fit in there. Eric, thoughts?
Please.
I am sure that physically he could. Whether Teron Armstead is going to agree to that at this stage in his career,
He's gonna look
I
at
would
you
say
and
is
say,
highly
Hell
unlikely.
no. Hell no. Are you crazy?
Again,
It is
just
fun to
thought.
think about, though.
Something to think about. You never know.
In
You
your
never
dreams,
know.
quite literally in your dreams. That's every.
All right, Louis, before we go, where can our listeners find you at?
So I do a show every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. It's Pulse of Fins Nation, where we take the pulse of Fins Nation. We interact with the chat. We take a look at what people have been saying around the league, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on the media pundits doing what they do. We talk about that. We offer commentary. We take the pulse of Fins Nation. That's what it means. So you can tune into that every 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday. Well, listen, that's a boy. That need to fix that sentence structure there. Every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and also right after that, it pops up on the 3YPC podcast feed.
Of course, and stick right here with us on the 5 Reasons Sports Network here at the Scouting Combine. As always, guys, go Fins.
See you next week.